everybody, and welcome to today's workshop, How to Be a Strong Self-Advocate. In a moment, we'll be opening up with a terrific panel of people who are living with ALS and caring for people with ALS who are going to share their journeys of self-advocacy. I'm confident that we're going to learn a great deal from everybody today, and I'm really looking forward. I would like to start by introducing my co-moderator today, Helen Mayer. Helen Mayer, RN, is a nurse with over 45 years of direct patient care and nursing experience. Helen has been with the ALS Association Greater New York chapter for nearly 10 years as a patient services coordinator. Her connection to the fight against ALS began as a personal one, as she lost a beloved nephew to ALS in 2011. Her nursing degree was earned in 1973 from Westchester Medical Center in Valhalla, New York. It was then known as the Grassland School of Practical Nursing. That sounds nice, Helen.
Yes.
And she also earned an associate degree in nursing in 2010 from Excelsior College in Albany, New York. In a moment, Helen will be greeting you all. And I just want to let you all know that if you have any questions in the course of the presentations, you're invited to enter them into the Q&A tab down here at the bottom, and we'll get to them at the conclusion of our program. Thanks, welcome, and take it away, Helen.
Okay, and welcome to everyone, and thanks for joining us. And I also agree with you, Deb, that it is going to be a great session of just listening to everyone about self-advocacy. And I have the pleasure of introducing my co-monitor, which is Debbie Schlossberg, who has a master's in social work. She's patient service coordinator for the chapter. And Debbie has worked at the chapter since 2004. So she has a plethora of experience. Debbie has co-facilitated our support groups and is a clinical social worker at both Hackensack University Medical Center and Robert Wood Johnson in the ALS clinics, and has been involved in the chapter advocacy initiatives. Previously, Debbie has worked in settings related to hospice care and aging. So, and it's a pleasure to work with you, Deb.
It's a pleasure to work with you. Okay, so now I will introduce our first panelist, Dan Kraut. Dan lives in Fort Lee, New Jersey with his wife and 2 teenage children. He was diagnosed with ALS in late 2018. I'm sure there's a lot more in Dan's bio, but he was very humble, and that's what he provided us with. But we're going to learn a lot more about Dan in the next few minutes. So Dan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. So I got invited to participate in a funny way when Debbie or Charisse would ask every few months how I'm doing. I'd send a copy of the memo I prepared for my latest clinic visit. And she found them useful, as does the staff at Columbia where I'm a patient. So she asked me to participate in this panel, which I'm really happy to do. I found that compiling these notes have been helpful to me, and I'm thinking something similar could come in handy for you guys as well. Do you guys see my slideshow? Okay.
Not yet.
Nope. I'm going to do the talking in that case. So we're going to talk about a few things. Why you want a memo for the clinic team ahead of your visit. What are the key things to include? We're going to hopefully look at a sample front page. Talk about how you can make things easy for the clinic team. And then we'll look at a little more samples. One thing that was frustrating for me, it became clear in my first couple of appointments, I was spending so much time talking about things and digging up information that could have been prepared in advance. And then I'd leave and I'd be like, oh, I forgot to go over the one thing I meant to ask. I forgot to ask it. So I got to the idea where I was like, I really got to prepare a memo, and that's what I did. I don't know if any of you guys have experience with firefighters, who I used to deal with quite a bit, but if you go to the firehouse, everything's organized. All the fire trucks, they're all facing out. Everyone's gear is lined up, because when it's time to race to put out the fire, you can't be wondering who's got the axe, or who's going to drive today. All that needs to be organized in advance. And in some way, this is very similar. I mean, we are fighting for our lives here. So you want to approach this with preparation and urgency. So what do you want to include in the memo? I typically go 6 to 8 pages. I think you can probably get it done in 2 and get 80%, 90% of what you're going to need. But anything that's going to help them. One thing is administrative matters that can be taken care outside of the clinic. Sometimes this sounds super easy. The first couple times at Columbia, they asked me, there's a checklist of things. Do you need this? Do you need this? And one of the things I checked was, do you need help securing a handicap parking spot? Yes, I do. And I kept coming back to the meetings and they kept asking me, do you need help? And I was like, yes, I do need help. And then once I started putting these memos together, I put it on the front page. Hey, I'd like help with this handicap parking spot. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, and it was done promptly and happily. They're not trying to thwart you. These are busy people, and sometimes they have a very specialized area of expertise. So things like that can fall through the cracks, and they appreciate it when they know in advance. All right, he needs the handicap thing. A lot of these requests are going to be really simple. Things like I know you're going to have the questions like, am I going to make it to 2023? Or am I going to be able to walk in a year? Things like that. But there's also things, I have an example here. I needed straps for my leg brace. And again, if you let them know in advance, I need a couple straps, you go in, they have a couple straps. If not, it's like one call after another. Oh, the guy's not here. He's in the other building. So this really helps you maximize the time. I'm going to take one last try here to include my slideshow. Let me see if this helps. No, we're out of luck. All right.
See the green button at the bottom of the screen that says share screen?
Share screen.
Yes, click that.
Share. Oh, maybe I can do it. Do you guys see it now?
We got it.
We do.
Great.
Yeah.
All right, that's great. So here's the sample memo. There you see straps for the leg brace, handicap parking access, a form for the will. Scheduling the next appointment sounds very simple. That can be complicated. Often I was participating in clinical trial, which is on a slightly different rhythm, but sometimes we could coordinate the 2 visits, which was convenient for everyone. But if you don't plan that in advance, it's going to be very hard to do there. So put out a date and see if it works. Now we get to the medical stuff. And I assume most clinics are similar in that you're going to have specialists that deal with various problems. I'd make a little index, just as I had a front page for the presentation today. And this way, they can look, the breathing person can say, all right, page 6, that's for me, or not. By the way, anything that's important, put it on the front page, because it's unrealistic to expect people to read every single word of your note, just as you probably wouldn't either if everyone you dealt with was giving you a memo. But they will, I guarantee you they'll appreciate this. And another thing, this sounds a little odd, but we talk, the topic of self-advocacy, you will be taken more seriously and given more respect is not just like the 11 o'clock appointment, but, a person who's fighting for his life and appreciates everyone else's help. And to be honest, it's one of the reasons I'm happy when Debbie asked, could I do this today? Of course. You want to help the people that are helping you. So how do you make the memo accessible? Get all the important stuff on the front page, divide into sections. I talk about firefighting. I'm more involved in the business of presenting information. Bold type, underlines, you can make words larger. That helps too. Also, chronologies can be helpful. There's a lot of things that they're going to be asking. what was your weight? My wife, now that the visits are remote, I weigh myself. My wife takes my blood pressure with the sphygmometer. So you can check these things off really quickly. Get right to what you need to know. Here, you're going to look at a sample inside. In my case, from the very beginning, most of my issues have been strength and coordination issues. As you can hear, happily, I can talk pretty well. And I'd go through these. Again, you'll see things are in bold. Here's my right foot, my right leg. And they'll be able to zero in on what's important. For a while, really a period of many months, I had a port installed for a Radicava, which didn't go well. The thing got infected, it had to come out. So that was front of mind. And that would always go on the front page. Hey, what are we doing? Keep in mind, it's quite possible you will be making very big decisions, either at the clinic or right after the clinic. Do I start a medication? Do I have a port pulled out of me? You want to be at least as prepared as you are at the grocery store. I mean, you go to the grocery store and you've got your list. And it's easier, or at least it used to be, it's easier to go back to the grocery store if you forget something than it is to go back to the clinic. It's not easy to just text these people or call them. So you really want to maximize your preparation. Let me go a little further. So a list of medications. Here's my list of medications. This will come in handy, not just at the session, but any doctor you attend, perhaps with your insurer. These questions come up all the time. It's very easy to forget. What's that one in the blue bottle? Many of them have multiple names, right? There's the sort of trade name, the scientific name. Some of them, it changes. Is it milligrams? Is it IUs, international units? Have all that figured out in advance. I talked before about chronologies. One minor thing, in this, always put the most recent thing up front. If you look down to the levosimendan, which I think will be the 5th one, the first words I have there are I started levosimendan. Chronologically, that's true, but now I'm long off of it. And my poor doctor was like, what do you mean you started levosimendan? I'm going to redo this one for the next visit. And it'll read like the other ones with the most current information first. I also put vaccine stuffs on there. Again, those questions always come up. When did you get your vaccine? Hopefully, some of you are getting COVID vaccines or have had them. Another thing is, you guys all know I hope I get the initials right, ALS, FSR questions they ask, FRS. Debbie's nodding. I actually prepare that list in advance too. I don't know exactly how to score myself, but I do know, well, I had this incident where I was coughing, or, I dropped the bowl with the pretzels, and then they can judge. But it's real helpful to me to be like, wait a minute, when was that? Because they're really asking since the last time they saw you. And I will say this, back when I went to the office, it was so gratifying. I'd go in there and I'd see the thing that I sent in. There'd be a printout of it, the speech person or the breathing person, and they'd have their page and there'd be something circled and notes underlined. And it's such a help, because I've been there at the other end where it's like, they're asking questions and I'm like, oh, don't assume just because you answered something to the doctors, like in their questionnaire 2 days ago, they're going to know the answer when you get there. This will increase the odds they do. Another quick thing is when to send it. I usually send it in the morning. I found out this is sort of, at least the people I deal with, originally I had this idea where I'd send something when the thought occurred to me or when the need occurred, but it feels like they're more likely to read it in that 9 to 10 zone. And I'm like, here's the stuff coming up for a couple days, and also give them a chance. Hey, call me. if you have any other questions. I'm just going to scroll back. Some useful advice there. I'm prepared to wind down if there are questions, although Debbie, if you need me to go longer, I'm happy to do that as well.
I think we're going to do questions and answers at the end after we hear from everyone.
Okay,
Okay, that'd be great.
great.
So are you, you're ready to move, we're ready to move forward to
I'm
Carrie?
happy to cede the floor.
Okay,
But if you need me to talk longer, I certainly can.
okay.
I'd like to just jump in and say one thing. Being on the other end, the receiving end, as a clinic team member, I really want to amplify what Dan said, how helpful it is to us. I mean, you know, what Dan does is very thorough and very comprehensive. We know not everybody's going to do quite that, but the more the better. It helps us be efficient. It helps us focus our energies. It takes away, you know, all of those questions that take the first 15 minutes of a visit. We're all prepared. So I just want to say that it's very win-win. It's not just that it helps you as people coming to clinic, but it really, really, really helps and is appreciated by the clinic team. I just want to throw that in there.
Thank you.
Sorry, Helen, go ahead.
No, that's okay. That's good information, especially since you are in the clinics working. So I'm sure that you can see how it's very appreciative to the team. So, so Carrie, we're going to have you speak next. So let me just introduce Carrie. She is a caregiver for her husband, Al, who was diagnosed 4 years ago with ALS. His symptoms have been, you know, just withering and deterioration over time. Within 7 months, he had a G-tube and a tracheostomy, and is now dependent on tube feedings and mechanical ventilation for the last 3 years. So Carrie it has a full-time job, but she works from home as a manager of a contract research organization. And Al is a former emergency room nurse, and he has been an invaluable guide to the journey. So he's very familiar with the ins and outs of ALS. So Carrie, we welcome you, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Can you hear me?
You can.
Oh, very good. Well, thank you so much for the introduction. I am so honored to be part of this. And I apologize. I had some technical problems, so I didn't hear all of Dan's presentation, but I think it actually leads into mine very nicely. So along this journey, the part of the discovering what advocacy really involves, or what helps advocacy, what's relevant based on the introduction that you provided is that there have been, especially in the first year, a lot of hospital visits and a lot of insurance claims. And that has sort of led to situations that I've discovered that have taken some, that I had to work through. So what I would say, should I thank you. And so as part of this, that for context, you know, you've already heard that I'm the caregiver, Al's the patient. It's so relevant that Al's a nurse. That has been key to my ability to support him. And it's just us. We don't have children. Family members are either gone or too far away. So it really, navigating this has really been the two of us figuring things out. Go ahead to the next slide. The first thing I would say is everybody has an agenda. That is the provider, the insurer, and of course, it makes sense. They have their own point of view, but it may not be, the purpose may not be the same as yours. And it's really the most important thing that I've learned in trying to cover our needs or advocate for our needs is that we're the ones with the whole picture. The other, you know, the providers and the insurers will have lots of details in front of them. They might have a wealth of information that even we don't have, but we're the ones who it makes sense. We're the ones who have the whole story. it sometimes seemed at the beginning during that first year when there was just a flood of activity that we were sort of being directed, that we would get guidance from the providers or the insurers would make decisions, and it felt sometimes like we were the ones like gaining from their expertise. But really there are times when we didn't realize we were the experts, and the driver of all of this is, of course, we're the ones who care the most. We're the ones who can push this along. So kind of in spite of feeling overwhelmed, and in spite of feeling maybe that we wanted guidance, there are times when I realized I had to go ahead and speak up, because we're the ones who can pull the picture together for the provider or the insurer. Go ahead and move to the next slide. At the beginning, I was so overwhelmed, I just started writing things down. I mean, the simplest thing was that I was trying to differentiate between one medication and another. But it turns out I just have a page a day, sometimes a couple of pages a day, can be pretty messy, but it's amazing when I go back and I need to find something. If I've noted that I received a call or I called someone back, just knowing what day it occurred has sometimes saved a lot of aggravation and a lot of cash. So keeping a log has really helped. Go ahead and move to the next slide. So trusting yourself was number one. Two, keeping a log, but then don't hesitate to question. I have a few examples there just to kind of illustrate kind of a sometimes simple, sometimes not so simple scenarios in which it really mattered that we said something. The first was simply about a prescription. It's just to sort of talk about points of view. The second was really about catching errors, and the third was about having a very different agenda. So go ahead to the next slide, and I'll talk about this very simple example. We have the prescription for a particular medication came in a capsule, and I couldn't help noticing that occasionally we'd get a refill with a different color. Lower left is green, it's hard to tell. Upper right is blue. But the relevance is that the capsules on the lower left are filled with beads that are like sand. The upper right, they're beads that are like BBs. Unfortunately, I couldn't administer the upper right medication through the peg tube. And it kind of baffled me. The prescriber, the insurance, the company that's issuing this medication, they have the whole picture, but they're not always using the whole picture. So when I called, they explained, they had changed suppliers. And it kind of took a lot of effort for me to explain, I understand, but I can't use the pills that are on the capsules on the upper left. So they finally conceded and said, sure, we'll send out a new send the formulation you originally had, but that was at my expense. And even though they made a note, this happens just about twice a year. So keeping on top of it, having to say something is on me. I can't expect, at least I've learned this, I can't expect that they're going to pay attention. So anyway, we can move to the next slide. This next example is a little more complicated. During that first year, there were numerous hospitalizations, and there was, Alice took a while to get stable, coming home, having been in acute care and subacute care, getting used to his trach. Over that time, we were receiving a flood of communications, the explanation of benefits or the EOBs coming from insurance. We would receive, mail, email, web notifications, and trying to kind of keep track of what was. I should mention, we have commercial insurance is primary and Medicare is secondary. So I was trying to watch and see what made it through primary and what that insurer would cover, and then similarly what Medicare would cover. And over time, there were a series of ambulance ride claims that they were moving through the claim process. But you can move to the next slide. There of about 7 rides, the first or I'm not saying the first 3 rides, the middle 3 rides for some reason reverted from being covered in network later on to being not covered. Explanation was not enough information was received. So I contacted the insurance and they explained, oh, there's nothing you can do about it. You're not the one to provide the information. And I thought it was a little odd because if they needed, and they said they needed an explanation for the ride. Well, the hospitalization that resulted, all those services were covered. So anyway, fast forward, at the end of the year, the EOBs changed, and then they said because of a lack of information, I would pay full freight. The patient would pay full price, and it would be out of network, which is a fairly steep cost. And I was pretty overwhelmed. It kind of made me feel like I'd done something wrong. But you can move to the next slide. Bottom line is, I got kind of lucky. I was talking with a friend who put me in touch with a family member who actually worked for the insurance company. They were just in the process of retiring, and she was amazing. She said, number one, you absolutely want to request an appeal. You want to stick to their appeal timeline, and you want to lay it all out there. I'm going ahead and read straight from my notes. She said, be factual. Lay it all out, point out everything that didn't make sense. That is, show them what was presented to us and why it wasn't helping. Because I made a call, I had written a letter. So this more detailed letter was including things like documenting all the events, and then including, and you can move to the next slide, including a copy of every EOB or explanation of benefit, and this is a small number, that I was presented with to tell the story. And finally, she said, don't hesitate to point out that I'm the sole caregiver, I have a full-time job, I don't have time to keep them in line, and send it certified mail with return receipt. A couple months later, I get a letter, and they basically caved. They paid the whole thing. So I, could have been out of $10,000, but I'm glad I put the effort in. So it just kind of I guess you could go to the you can go to the next slide. It kind of comes down to, I'm glad I kept notes. I'm glad I bothered. It's unfortunate that I have to be the one to keep them in line, but I really couldn't afford to do otherwise. Okay, we can move to the next slide. It's a slightly different example. This third example is about a category of care called private duty nursing. Initially, when Al was being prepared to come home, I became acquainted with what's called a complex case manager. Insurance will appoint somebody to kind of be in touch with the family and have regular communication. And I already knew from this nurse that private duty nursing the purpose of it was not to provide custodial care, but to, during the initial period when the patient comes home, to help them get stabilized. Unfortunately, there was no agency that could provide somebody in time, and we never did get the private duty nurse. I was also told it wasn't on me to find that agency, but I knew of the category. Fast forward, months go by, Al's hospitalizations are over. He finally he's stable, and we're actually getting into kind of a nice routine. And I started getting a lot of calls from the complex case manager pressuring me to find an agency that would have a private duty nurse. And I questioned it. I thought this was not covered. Al, that this was only required when Al transitions to home. But she didn't explain. She just said, you have to find a private duty nurse. So here I am spending the free time I don't have trying to find an agency. I found one, but they would have to recruit for someone in our area. That led to them trying to recruit. And Al and me both are found ourselves having to do a lot of meet and greets. A couple of months into it, we found a nurse that we liked, that the agency was willing to hire, and we started filing all the paperwork. It even evolved to where I unfortunately had to find a friend to watch Al so I could attend my dad's funeral. And I'm on the altar in another city reading a statement about my dad, and my phone is ringing off the hook. That's how busy this activity was to find a private duty nurse. When I finally got home from the funeral, I found out that the claim was filed and the insurance denied it. So it seemed a little odd. I guess I made a wrong assumption. I thought maybe this was the end of the insurance year and they wanted to line up some private duty nursing for some reason. Well, the claim was denied, and the complex case manager tried to dodge my calls. But in the end, she said, oh, it was denied because Al was stable. And I couldn't help but ask her, so with all the information you have, you didn't know that? And bottom line is, it's me learning that her agenda was to finish her checklist for the end of the year. My point of view is that if Al were ever to need a private duty nurse during an unstable period, that company would still have to recruit. It would not be possible. So we did not gain any, we didn't get ahead through this experience. All that we gained was that the complex case manager finished her checklist. So there are different points of view, different agendas. So I guess in conclusion, I just want to go ahead to the next slide, is just to say that if there's a decision to be made about what you need, you really want to make sure that you push the question, is this service or this arrangement needed for the patient's well-being? And would it be covered? Would it be a network? Finally, move to the last slide. That bottom line is, don't let go. You're the one who can connect the dots the best. Errors do happen, and they do happen frequently. It's not necessarily true that the other parties are going to notice the errors or drive home the importance of making sure decisions are made correctly. And to borrow a phrase, the friend that helped me through the insurance scenario with ambulance rides said that I should use the phrase common purpose, because that's one of the guiding principles of that company, that the employees are supposed to have a common purpose with the patient and the caregiver. And that's kind of what has helped guide me. I hope this is helpful. I've learned a lot, but I continue to learn every day. And I'll wait for questions at the end.
Thank you, Carrie. Wow, this is very empowering. Truly very empowering. You know, I think that we can't say that enough.
Yeah.
You are the experts. Other people have expertise in their siloed area, and that's why you coordinate all of them together. But ultimately, Carrie's very first slide, her very first words, trust yourself. It's a hard thing to do when you're facing waters that you've never navigated before.
Yeah.
But trust yourself, because you truly are the experts. So thank you. And we will come back later with some questions. Now I'm going to introduce to you Carl Manger. Carl has a bachelor's degree in communication and music, as well as a master's degree in counseling and organizational psychology from Rutgers University. Go RU. His professional career as chief operating officer focused on the development and implementation of client-centered social services for New Jersey nonprofit agencies, including the Hyacinth AIDS Foundation, New Jersey Foster Parents Association, Family Service Association of New Jersey, and Jewish Family Service. Carl was diagnosed with ALS 14 years ago in 2008, and he has worked tirelessly to continue living independently for the duration in his single family home. Carl, you ready? Take it away. You're muted.
Yeah, okay. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. It's been a long haul. I was diagnosed in 2008, so that's 14 years ago. The month before I got my diagnosis, I'd been going through a lot of diagnostic testing. I was laid off from my work. It was 2008. It was a bad time for the economy. And anyway, so I was out of work for about a year. Then I applied for Social Security disability. I was only 53 at the time. I'm now 67. And that came through rather quickly because I had all the ducks in a row, all the documentation and so forth. So that was accepted. And the first year, I pretty much was able to navigate on my own. Then I became acquainted with the ALS Association and other ALS service providers. And a couple of people who were in social work mentioned to me about a website called Lots of Helping Hands. And the concept behind that was to post a calendar, and on that calendar, you could list help that you needed. Well, the idea is actually to provide care for the caregiver or respite for a caregiver. Well, I sort of turned the whole concept on its head and put in activities that I needed help with. The idea was also that you would have a coordinator who would assemble a calendar and keep it, monitor it to make sure that slots were filled. Well, that didn't work. I tried 3 different people, and so I've been coordinating this for myself. I started in 2010, so that's 11 years ago. And to begin with, I actually had to recruit people to help. And to do that, actually, the ALS Association provided a speaker. I held a short, like 1-hour tutorial, if you will. At my local church, I sing in a church choir and invited friends and family members. I've sung in choirs most of my life. There's a local chamber choir in central New Jersey that I sang with. I invited people from there. I sang in a temple choir for 35 years, semi-professionally. I invited people from there, and as well as people from the church where it was hosting. It was all done through donations. The only donation that I really needed was we provided food. So that sort of attracted people, particularly from the church where it was being held, because we did it right after a Sunday morning service. The ALS contact that time made the presentation. Debbie Schlossberg was kind enough to do a second presentation about 2 or 3 years ago. And it was to give people an overview of ALS, what to expect, and then we directed people to the website. On the website, I had things like helping me with laundry, helping me with house cleaning, vacuuming. I mean, they were sort of small, discrete tasks that somebody could do in a short period of time, not hours on end, and or giving me a ride to my local physician, giving me a ride to the ALS clinic, giving me a ride to go grocery shopping. Very, just as I said, discrete, time limited, so people didn't feel like their whole morning or afternoon was being hijacked. And we went on that route for several years. The website is password protected. Nobody could view the website unless I gave them permission by enrolling their email address. Once somebody went onto the website to look at the calendar to see if they could pick an activity that could help me with, they had to select a password that would allow them to view the calendar. So it is password protected. Not everybody can see everything. And then for each activity, it would list what it is, how long was the estimated time frame, if it was how to get to my house, my address, my phone number, if need be. And it's worked rather well. Of course, the main thing I need help with at this point is with meal preparation in the evening. When I first started it, there were a variety of things, and there were a variety of ways to help me. I mean, sometimes people would come over, I would provide the ingredients, we would make a meal here. Or sometimes people would prepare something at their home and bring it over. Or we'd get takeout. I wasn't looking for a handout. If we were, of course, if I provided the ingredients, I paid for everything. But if it was takeout or people were bringing meals, we split the cost of that. So, it wasn't a financial burden for anybody. Of course, it comes along the pandemic, a year ago, January, and I had a lot of people saying, they were uncomfortable. We were all told to quarantine. And of course, I had people coming in and out of my house, so it wasn't just me alone. So I went a different route, and I asked people to either uh, pick up something or make something. We would talk about what to make so that they weren't bringing over something that I absolutely could not uh, eat because it was not to my liking. And then I would pay them. They would enter. I would keep my distance. We would both be wearing masks. To this day, we still do that. Wear masks. They would wash their hands, use hand sanitizer, and then they would set up the meal, be here 10 minutes maybe, tops, and then leave. And I would eat on my own. But I had to figure out a way to keep meals coming in because my arms and my hands no longer work. I have very limited mobility with that. And matter of fact, I can only walk a few steps these days. Obviously, I've retained my powers of speech, and I still sing in the church choir. I recorded something for the Easter service last weekend because I can still maintain my singing voice. So it's been a long road. And I've been fortunate enough to have people who are willing to volunteer. As I said, I looked to a variety of people, people I had worked with, people in the church choir, the temple choir, and other choirs I've sang with in Central New Jersey, friends. Some people fall away over time. And actually, people who are helping me sometimes recruit people on my behalf, which is nice. People I didn't even know, but of course, they were known to somebody who's helping me, so I could trust that recommendation. So I don't put out a general ad or anything. I live alone. I have all my life, and that's been a challenge at this point. I continue to want to live at home. I unfortunately broke my leg in July of 2019, and I was in rehab for 3 weeks, and it was the absolutely the worst experience of my life. I would never want to go into a situation like that. So I'm continuing to try to find ways to live at home. I have a second bedroom. I now have a housemate who's here in the evening and who's for a minimal amount a month. It's $500. That helps pay my utility costs. Uh, that's I think that's about it in a nutshell. Uh, I don't know if you can see, but above my right eye, I have this big bump. I'm falling more frequently these days. I fell about a month ago. I fell about a month and a half ago. I fell about 3 weeks ago. The most recent fall was bad. I fell in the bathroom, smacked my head into the tile. I didn't black out or anything, but a friend came over. I have an alert button. It registered the fall. They called me and said, "What do I need?" I had them contact a friend who came over, got me to my feet. Anyway, so long and the short of it is I did get to see the doctor over the computer. I had a CAT scan the next day, which came back okay. However, I'm very wobbly and very anxious about being alone. So I'm trying to figure out ways to have additional people come. As I said, I have a homemaker every morning, a paid homemaker. I call it a homemaker because I've had experience with home health aides, and I also find them to be fairly incompetent and worthless. So I recruited privately. That person gets me up in the morning, actually helps me get out of bed, showers me, dries me off, dresses me. I have a blood pressure cuff. I started taking my blood pressure. But beyond that, does homemaking things for me. So it's a measure of personal care and a measure of homemaking. And he's here for 3.5 hours a day. He's a young man in his mid-20s. and he's tall and strong, so he can deal with helping me if, lifting me up out of bed and things like that. Um, uh, so there's been a lot I've had to do to keep going, and I do it. And it's getting more difficult being on 14 years. I'm certainly not where I was 14 years ago. I was able to drive and handle a car for the first 4 years. In 2012, I gave that up because I realized I could no longer do that without worrying about me or somebody else being injured. And it's been a learning process. I figured out all kinds of accommodations to get me to this place. I have a pole next to my bed, which helps me get out of bed. I have a shower chair. I have a bidet toilet seat. I converted my garage into a family room. I'm in a ranch house, which works well, except when I want to get outside because there's 3 steps down from the front door to the back door. So I converted my garage into a den. I put in a lift so I can take the lift up and down from the the level of my home to the street level, and then I can get it inside and out. I do have a power wheelchair that was underwritten by Medicare, and then I can get outside into the yard. So I think that's it in a nutshell. Anything you want
Yeah.
to add, Debbie?
No, I was just going to say, what an incredible job you have done to take care of yourself and be your own advocate. It's amazing. And I bet that you are also giving a sense of satisfaction to the people that are helping you also. They probably do it out of love and caring for you. So I think it's wonderful, wonderful what you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah. So anything else that you want to share with us before we move on?
I don't think so. I'm just looking over. I had a list of things. Not really. The only thing I didn't get a chance to write down that website, lotsofhelpinghands.com. So if you can post that would be helpful, maybe.
Yeah, we can take care of that. That's not a problem.
Okay.
That's terrific. Yeah.
Because that's been that has really what's kept me going. My website calendar, because people can sign up as for whatever they want to do, and know what it is that it entails. It's not like they're coming over and I'm asking to do a 9 million things in a short period of time.
That's a very good plan that you set in motion. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we'll move on to our last presenter, which is Sherry Graham. Sherry, her husband, Vince, has ALS and was diagnosed in March of 2017. He no longer can use his limbs, and he's on a non-invasive ventilator 24/7, but thankfully still able to swallow, and he still talks. And every day they continue to push forward whatever they would like to do. And they look forward to traveling, to eating out, and living life to their very fullest. So Sherry, if you're ready, we would love to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Sorry, I'm in my office. My phone's ringing. So I wanted to talk today a little bit about getting out and doing things to make everybody feel better, because with COVID, it's been very difficult. We've all been stuck in our homes, and those with ALS are stuck in their homes anyway, and they're trying to stay away from people. So we try to get Vince out as much as possible. And especially with not being able to be indoors, and it was very difficult to decide where to go and what to do outside. So we always traveled. We went out for meals. We went to the movies. So it was a big change with COVID. But we were able to find a lot of outdoor rail trails, they're called. They're walkways that we found that were paved. So it's easy to go on the wheelchair, because he's obviously in a wheelchair, the motorized one. And I'm going to actually show this one that's by us. This is the one that we found. This is the one that's locally for us. This is a great website. If anybody wants to find any trails, it's all throughout the United States. It's not even necessarily New York, but they're in Rockland, Westchester, New York City, and they were very easy. They're all paved, and they're straight, no steps, and it was very easy to get around. So that was very nice. And also we travel a lot, so we try to. We've been on cruises. We've been to hotels. We're taking the auto train. We're going to Florida next month. And you got to remember, you have to understand that, even though he's in his wheelchair and we use the Hoyer lift and he sleeps in a hospital bed and we use a shower, a shower chair commode that we take in and out of the bathroom. When we travel, we either take ours with us or we rent. Even when we were on the cruise, we were able to rent a hospital bed and they put it in the room for us and they took out one of the beds. And then when we're staying in a hotel, we have the same thing. We're able to get all the equipment that we need. We do have a van, so we kind of pack it all in as much as possible. Our 2 adult children do live at home with us, so it makes it very easy to travel and to get around and to go out because they're here to help us. My son moved home from Florida because my husband got sick, so he's living with us now, so that worked out very nicely. We try to visit with family and friends as much as possible. His sister recently moved to a home that was a ranch, so it was very nice. We're able to get into the house, so that's good. Most people do come here because it's obviously hard for him to get into someone else's house. And sometimes the backyards even have steps to get to. So sometimes it makes it hard for that too. And now with COVID kind of winding down and everybody getting their vaccines, we've been trying to get some more people in because I can see the difference in his temperament when he's with people, when he's not with people. You don't want to stare at the same people all the time. I know that the kids are home with us and there's 4 of us in the house, but it's nice to see another face and to really be with somebody and to say hello. So I'm trying to visit with the family and that's about it. Everything's out there for you to find. Everything's available on the internet. We were interested in going someplace instead of getting on a plane because I dread ever again going on a plane, trying to have him lifted in and out of the seat. So we decided to go to Tennessee and we actually found these handicapped cabins. And there was about 8 different cabins. For some reason, that area in the Rocky Mountains, Smoky Mountains, is very handicap accessible. They have a lot of even trails and stuff, hiking trails that are accessible. They're flat. And you just have to be careful because when you go and look for an accessible room, it doesn't mean that there's a roll-in shower. We made that mistake once, the first time we ever traveled. He was not in a wheelchair yet, but it was still easier, obviously, not to have to take a step to get into the shower. And we took an accessible room and it turns out it wasn't with a roll-in shower. So they were very accommodating, but you got to be careful. That's very important. What else do I have here? We've been trying to, just trying to get out more and go outside and just get with the weather changing and getting better, just try to get outside as much as possible.
Nice.
Short and sweet.
That was great. Thank you very much, Sherry. So we do have one question. I'm trying to right now. We're going to have a few question and answer, a little bit of time. So if anybody would like to put anything in the chat, we would be happy to answer some questions. It's a little hard for me to read this question. Help me out here, Deb. Did you see this question? Okay.
Yep, I got it. It's a
Okay,
good question.
Yeah.
Somebody asked, Dan, I think this is directed towards you. Is your memo boilerplate available or at least the headers? Do you think an in-person visit is important? We have only had virtual.
Yeah, so I sort of edited the memo. I only showed part of the slideshow. I think it's in the system. If it's not, I can forward it to Debbie, who can forward these pages to you. There's some that are more personal than I necessarily wanted the whole world to say, but there's also some that I thought could be helpful, and I'd be very comfortable sharing. So if you give that information to Debbie, I can get it to you. I do think personal is better. I will say this though, it's hard for me to get around. Columbia's not the most convenient place to get in and out of. So there are times, and I still work, I'm work from home. And it's similar, and it'd be very hard for me to get all the places I need to be. So there are some conveniences to being at home. There are also things where they want to measure your breathing. Obviously, you have to do the best workarounds you can. And there are, but some of the equipment where, they put it in your face, that option's not available. And even seeing your various functions, in my case, the hand is a big issue. Often they'd be like, all right, push back. And they feel, they really have this sixth sense of like how much strength you have or you don't have. So when you can get in person, I think there's a logic to it. If you can't go in person, it does put a premium on you being their eyes and ears, and letting them know what you're feeling. And so I go every 3 months, probably most people do. I'm not logging stuff every day, but there might be a time, like after I had a fall, I was like, you know what? It took me a day or two to really even want to walk around very much. But I'm like, I'm going to get to the computer. I'm going to explain this as best as I can so that when I have to submit this in the end of the month or whatever, I have a good explanation.
Thank you.
Sure.
We see a couple of more questions in the chat. So there's one here. Sherry, this is probably for you. What questions should you ask hotels ahead of time before you travel? And how do you find out if attractions that you visit are accessible?
So with the hotels, you have to, if the person is in a Hoyer lift, we always, we rent a hospital bed. So very recently, we're planning a trip. We're going to Disney at the end of May. So I actually called and rented the hospital bed, and they told me that I had to call the hotel to make sure it fit. We did have an accessible room, but I called to ask them if there was room in there or if the bed had to be taken out. We had gone to an ALS function once and they took the bed out of the room, so that kind of gave us the idea of doing that as well. And it turned out that the room wasn't big enough. So the manager got on the phone and they actually bumped us up into a bigger accessible room with a roll-in shower so that the hospital bed would fit and that the wheelchair would fit. You have to make sure if you are sleeping in the regular bed in the hotel that it's not a platform bed, because a lot of these beds are on platforms and then the Hoyer lift doesn't go underneath. So don't be afraid to ask the questions and call the hotel and speak to a manager and make them, they put me on hold and they spoke to housekeeping because the people at the front desk, they don't know. So housekeeping got on the phone and they tell me that what kind of room it is, how it's set up, what type of bed it was. When we rented this, when we looked at the cabins, everything's online. When we rented these cabins in the Smoky Mountains, they show pictures of every room. They showed the bathroom. You have to just be careful that it's a roll-in shower and not an accessible shower, because an accessible shower is a tub and not a shower. And what was the other part of the question?
Hold on, let me just pull it back up again so I can see it.
Oh, the attractions.
The attractions, yes.
Again, you just have to call. Disney is a great place to go. Disney and Universal, they have their handicap passes. They don't call them handicap passes. They're a little bit different. You really can't say that you're in a wheelchair, so you need it. We were told to tell them that you are medically fragile. And then they give us, it's called a dash pass at Disney or Universal. They have an accessible pass. And then it just makes the wait times different. You don't have to stand on line. You can kind of walk around and then come back. You just have to call. I mean, everything's on the internet. If you look up under the facts, they tell you the accessibility of it. And my daughter went online and she just looked up different attractions that were in the area of where we're going. I mean, the internet makes it very easy to actually really look it up and find out before you go.
Thank you. We have another question.
Yeah, here's another question.
Okay, go ahead, Deb.
Are there professional health advocates with familiarity with ALS? I mean, I think Helen and I can answer that question.
Yeah.
You know, I think to a large extent, we are your professional health advocates. There are certain things that cannot be done without your authorization and approval. There are limitations, the extent to which we can really do everything that a person might need, but that's our job to try.
Yeah.
So if you have any issues, you know, if any of this brought up questions for any of the attendees here, you'd like assistance with advocacy, getting things done, getting things obtained, getting things accomplished, your first call should be to your patient services coordinator. And whatever we can't do, we'll help you figure out how to do. Is there anything you would add to that, Helen?
Only that we are your advocates. That's what we do. We do the best we can to solve problems and provide resources for you, and just be there to support you in every way. We do run support groups, both Debbie and I run them. We don't run them together. I run them with a colleague in the Hudson Valley. Debbie is in New Jersey. And we encourage all of you to try to attend our support groups. There's a tremendous amount of resources there for everyone.
Good.
So, yeah, that's it. I think there's another question. Okay, let's see. Would the speakers be willing to get calls from new patients for some suggestions how to go about their experience and how to deal with new things? So I think that probably could be open to any one of you. Would anybody like to answer that question?
Yeah, I'd be comfortable doing that again. Maybe you'd have to go through Debbie or whatever. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Carrie. Absolutely. Me as well.
Okay.
There is a certain community or solidarity between, I've never met Carrie in person. I've seen some of her emails going back and forth, but you know, you're all going through this together. So people have helped us, and if we can help other people, we want to do it.
Yeah, Debbie,
Yeah.
if you want to connect me with people who want to talk, that'd be fine also. One other thing I wanted to mention is by virtue of having my calendar and the activities that I need help with, it's a built-in socialization because people come here to help me. That was sort of a byproduct of having activities that people could volunteer for. So even though the pandemic, people were quarantining, I would see people at least once a day to help me with my evening meal. Even if it's just for 5 minutes or 10 minutes at a time in a socially distanced manner. But I'm looking forward to that opening up again when I've been fully vaccinated and should be able to flow freely through society once again.
Yeah, and if anybody needs help, I mean, we do travel a lot. I mean, I've always, in our support group, I've always helped a lot of people and steered them in the right direction.
Yes, you have. We appreciate that.
It looks like we have one more comment here to share, a great suggestion. As a former travel agent specializing in travel for those with physical challenges, Sherry made some excellent points. Many thanks for all of the info she provided to all. Also, a good idea is to reach out to ALS advocacy organizations in the location of your travel destination for assistance and support, and they can be an excellent resource as well. So thank you to whomever added that comment as well. And I also just wanted to take a moment and make sure that everyone knows they can download Dan and Carrie's PowerPoints that are attached to the session.
Thanks, Vivian. And I think that we're about out of time. Is that right? Do we have any more questions? Is there a new one coming? No? Okay. So I think I'd like to say thank you to every single person that participated, every single person that attended. I hope that there was some very valuable information that was shared. So I do hope that you can take something away from it today. And if you have questions after this session, I can tell you that you can just go ahead and contact our website, by logging on, and we will be able to still get all those answers for you. So if you have questions after, and we certainly can provide the information for all of our presenters today. They've all agreed that they'd be happy to talk to you directly. So thank you.
One second, sorry, Helen. Somebody asked about the trails that I had showed before. It's traillink.com.
Okay, thank you. So, Deb, anything you'd like to add? So we really appreciate, we are here for you. I think that's really important for you to know that we are here for you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
No, I was just, again, going to thank all of our presenters. You're inspiring, you're empowering, you're informative, and it doesn't surprise me that people want to create direct connections with you because you're really very compelling, every single one of you.
Yeah.
So thank you for your time and your effort.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Guys.
Thank you.
Our
Yes.
pleasure.
Bye,
Our
everybody.
Thank you for
pleasure.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.